Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and my name is Chair, and today we are going to be reviewing the album Rubber Soul by the Beatles. Yes, I am super excited to go into this album and actually this band because I have a good handful of their albums. This has been a chunk or an artist I've been really looking forward to as I've started this series. But as usual, I'll keep these videos relatively short. We rank these albums in three categories: the context and creation of the album, the songs themselves on the album, and finally, the album cover. All those scores will be combined to a final score of 15, and that will give us the ranking that we have. Now, to start off with context, I don't think I have to explain too much about who the Beatles are. If you're clicking at this video, I'm assuming you probably already know who they are, or there's probably 5 million other videos that could explain the importance and creation of the Beatles. But if I were to put it in words, it's a group of 4 men in the 60s that pretty much revolutionized pop music and rock music and what we know music as today, and also the culture of what music is and how it can have a play on society itself. So, one of the greatest bands of all time, if not the greatest band of all time. Now, diving into this point in their careers, this is kind of the middle point of the Beatles' tenure. They had 5 albums before this. All of them went #1 minus the debut, but it's really hard for a debut to hit #1 anyway. They were pretty much at the top of the world. This was the peak of the Beatles. I mean, I think pretty much all of their time as a band was their peak, but this for sure was a big point for them. They just did Shea Stadium in 1964. This is happening in 1965. They came out with the movie Help, which I believe was their first Beatles movie. There's a few of them. But yeah, wrapping up 1965, they were extremely busy because at the time in the 60s, bands were extremely marketized. It was really quick turnaround albums, which we saw with like 2 albums a year they were releasing. They were in movies, like I said. They had a television program. They were making press conferences. They had to do, all these things. So the Beatles were pretty stressed out. And this was going to be the end of this kind of busy season. They had a North American tour during the summer of 1965, and they were going to turn around, create this album, and then they were kind of going to go on holiday for a little bit, give themselves a break. They also were pretty much hitting the burnout of touring, and they didn't enjoy the thousands of millions of screaming people at them everywhere they went. So unbeknownst to them, this would probably be kind of the end of their touring. They would never really tour again. They would do a little bit more when this album came out, but that was kind of it. So the hiatus turned into pretty much forever, but it also kind of helped because the Beatles were really getting into the production side of their music. It was rather than just writing and recording while on the road, they actually were in the studio, getting their hands in the production side, working with George Martin a lot more on this album, and that shows, in the songs themselves, but it also showed, the ability to add more textures and flavors to the music, and of course during this time, one of the biggest changes for the Beatles was the use of psychedelic drugs, which was really fun at the time. They met Bob Dylan and smoked weed with him. They also met Elvis while they were in North America over the summer. So a lot of things were kind of impacting the Beatles to where they got more deeper complexities not only within themselves as they grew as adults and as a band, but also within the music they're creating. And you can easily see that here on Rubber Soul. The creation took place at Abbey Road Studios, which would be the place of many Beatles albums as we get later into the series. But like I said, with the effects of drugs and deeper context that they met with Elvis and Bob Dylan, you really get a more rounded album with Rubber Soul. Kicking it off with an Otis Redding inspired track about materialism with Drive My Car, probably one of the better Beatles openers. I mean, there's so many countless great Beatles openers. I think they are really good at starting an album off well. The Norwegian Wood follows that up, which kind of switches it into more of a folky atmosphere, and you see George Harrison, my favorite Beatle, start to dabble with the sitar a little bit, and that will only grow as the albums come by. And also more complex lyrics from John Lennon, which we will see in a lot of songs on this album. Nowhere Man and In My Life are other great examples to show his growing lyricism. And as John Lennon would like to put it, he was kind of in that, depressive, drugged out state during this album. But it made some really great tracks. More complex love songs than the earlier pop love songs from the Beatles here. The examples include Run For Your Life, Michelle, I'm Looking Through You, Girl. All of those kind of give more darker sided love tales, which I think is pretty fascinating because they're still really catchy songs. But they're a lot more than just let's go on a date, type of Beatles that was their earlier catalog. But there still is those fun pop bouncy tracks like What Goes On, Wait, If I Needed Someone, still sprinkled throughout. And also, of course, this is the middle of the 60s. The protests were very much starting. The summer of love was just around the corner. So you see that on tracks like Think For Yourself and The Word. And you sprinkle a little bit of psychedelic production throughout the entirety of it, and you have yourself Rubber Soul. Now, if you couldn't tell by that long-winded rant I was just on, of course, and most easily, the context and creation of this album is a easy 5 out of 5. It's just fascinating. I could go more into it, but I want to keep these videos relatively short and just give you a small glimpse of, the album and my review of it, because that also leads you to try it out yourself, which obviously I highly recommend. Now, what tracks did I like? Well, I pretty much know all the tracks on this album. There's 14 songs on here. I like about 10 of them. I would say I love about 10 of them. I like all of them, but I really only love about 10 tracks. There's a few songs that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I still know them word for word because I've listened to this album probably like a dozen or more times. And it's not bad hearing those 4 other tracks. I just kind of only enjoy them in sparing moments, like when I'm getting through this album. When they pop up, I don't mind listening to them then, but I'm not really going to add them to any of my personal playlists. It's really hard to listen to What Goes On. Not one of my favorite tracks, and as much as I love George, If I Needed Someone really doesn't do anything for me. Overall, the score for this category is a 3.57 out of 15, which is still really good. There's just a couple tracks, I don't necessarily love. The final category, of course, is the album cover. Now, this picture, it does have a funny backstory behind it. When they took this photo, they were trying to fit the scale of the album cover, and they kind of like stretched out the image. But the Beatles ended up loving that effect on it. It was kind of by accident, but it did give this sense of like psychedelia that they were trying to get at, as you can tell within the album. So I think it really matches what this album is as a whole, which I think is perfect. I also love the lettering. Kind of gives off, the generic 60s psychedelia feel. So I think this really, really does match it. I think they have better album covers, and I don't think this is necessarily the most iconic, but I do think it is really, really good. But I do think that this really kind of captures the pot-headed Beatles in a picture, if you could. It's not their most iconic, but it is still really, really good. I would give this category a 4 out of 5 for the album cover. Combining all the scores, that gives us a final total of 12.57 out of 15, our highest scoring album this far in the series. That does not surprise me at all. I really, really love this album. If you haven't already watched the ranking of when I had 150 vinyl records, I'm pretty sure this was in my top 10. I absolutely love this album. I love the Beatles, of course, as well, but if you really want to get into the Beatles, I not only recommend this album to someone wanting to get into the Beatles, I recommend this to anyone just wanting to learn more about music. This is a really well-made, a perfect item of 60s pop music, but also just an album in general. I think if you also remember, if you watched the Beatles ranking video I did with Claire, she said that this album is so relatable to the time in the 60s, but the songs are still really relevant and meaningful today, which I think is, a very powerful note to take away from it. So yeah, absolutely check out Rubber Soul. That makes me really excited for our next video, which is going to be Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Yes, I don't sadly have Revolver. That is the one kind of in the discography I don't have. After this point, I had all the albums after this. But I do really love Sgt. Pepper's. I'm excited to get into that. I'm also really excited to just get back into my Beatles phase. I haven't really had one since I was a sophomore in college. but I really, really do love this band, so tune in to that. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, look for other videos that are going to be coming out. But tune into this series because I really, really love the Beatles, and I think this will be really fun to get more into them and to, you know, show you what I think of them when it comes to the ranking. But other than that, tune in until next time. Hope you have a great one. See you then.